Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Doug Smith, President and CEO of the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association. We represent 375 new car dealers, as the senator spoke, nearly 22,000 direct employees, and 83% of these dealerships across the state are family-owned and multi-generational. Quick history about how we've gotten to this point, and many of you know or may not know that the franchise-franchisor relationship is governed by a franchise agreement, or what's also known as a sales and service agreement. And it's basically a blueprint for how a dealer and a manufacturer interact. It outlines responsibilities each and statutorily clarifies what the relationship can consist of and the legality of the acts each party can consent to. The modern versions have been in place for about 45 or 50 years, really since the late 70s, mid-70s to now. They have changed and kind of morphed over the years, and it really at the purpose of all this is that the manufacturer and its franchisee, its dealer, its partner, know the rules and can operate under those rules in a civil and a legal manner. The main type, it's not perfect. 85% of the time it works very well. The 15% of the time where there's discrepancies and we butt heads as a representative of the dealers and the manufacturers is usually on compensation. And the main type of these arguments are on service payments for recall and warranty work, which is compensated. Recall work is a compensated fix to the dealer from the OEM for improperly built, that would be the recall, or lapses in quality issues in a consumer's automobile, which is the warranty. The OEM, the manufacturer, places the vehicle that they sell. Every car comes with a warranty of some type. They vary in length based by the manufacturers. And again, the warranty is placed on the vehicle by that manufacturer. When a consumer encounters one of these two issues, either a recall or a warranty, they take their vehicle to a local dealership for repair, and there's no cost to the consumer, but the dealership does incur costs, which they expect and are later compensated by the manufacturer. When a recall or a warranty happens, the OEM, the manufacturer, computes the time that they subjectively feel it should take an ASE certified technician to complete the work. It takes the dealer technician, if it takes the dealer technician longer, the tech is not compensated for the difference on the current system or in the current system. This leads to unapplied pay for the technician, unapplied and unpaid compensation for the dealer, and this money can be in the tens of thousands of dollars for a dealer in a calendar year. They basically have to eat that cost. And at the end of the spectrum, the technician is not compensated for the full amount of the repair. There are dispute provisions in the sales and service agreements. Each sales and service agreement has some kind of dispute resolution process on an issue like this. Some are pretty good, and others are cumbersome, time-consuming, and little used by the dealership to seek the additional pay because of the amount of time it takes, and for many instances, it's just a blanket no when they try to submit these offers for additional compensation. We have a dispute provision that's in statute now. It's in 407-828. And again, it's very cumbersome. It's very hard to use. It is on the burden of the dealer to prove that the time was wrong, and it's costly. That's the other part of this. What this bill would do is to change the dispute resolution process and use a third-party time guide as the arbiter for the dispute. This process has recently been codified in other states, Minnesota and New York State most recently. Illinois has a dispute process, but gives the tech full compensation for all the recall work and warranty work regardless of the dispute. Illinois dealers have actively recruited techs from Missouri simply by selling this in equity and pay for doing the same job. That's really how we kind of got to this point today. The independent time guides, for example, would be your Mitchells, your Chiltons. They are kind of an industry standard for ASE service technicians. They basically outline that it should take this amount of time for this job. So if there's a dispute where the technician takes 5 hours to do a 2-hour job that the manufacturer says it should be, the third-party time guide would be the arbiter in this. And if it said, 4 hours, the pay would be 4 hours. If it said something, you can follow that. The current process is a hindrance in an already depleted technician ranks in Missouri. We just don't simply have enough techs. There's not enough kids coming into this industry. And dealer competitors are actively using the current rules or the current processes as recruitment tools for independent repair shops. I work closely with the tech school in St. Louis. The independent shops, your Firestones, your Meineke's, those shops are coming in actively recruiting techs that are getting ready to leave the program and saying, why would you want to go work for a franchise dealer when they're only going to pay you 40% for the work you're performing? You can come to work for us, we'll pay you 100%. Now, they're not doing recall work at these independent shops, but they are doing work that basically pays 100% for the job. So it's having an impact on us, and it's slowly gotten worse, as the senator said, over the last 20 years, really the last 15, but it's something that we feel that needs to be fixed. Other states have had the foresight to do it. We feel that Missouri should do the same thing. This is an incredibly complex issue, and yes, our opponents, who we have a really good relationship with, many of them are here, will tell you that a lot of the stuff I'm saying is an oversimplification of the process. They will also throw out numbers in the millions and billions of dollars that this law change will cost them. Again, these are unsubstantiated numbers by the manufacturers. We respect their position, but we feel that these are just numbers, and that money's the cost is going to go somewhere. It'll go back to the technicians and the dealers and the people in this state that I represent. We also respect the fact that 2 OEMs have manufacturing facilities in Missouri. Personally, I think that every vehicle assembler in the world should have a facility of some type in the state of Missouri. We're a great place to do business. We're a great place to do manufacturing. A recall, as I said, is a design, it's an engineering or an assembly malfunction. Something was done either in the design of that vehicle or at the point of assembly. In Missouri, the dealer has nothing to do with that. They're tasked to fix it, and our feeling is that a recall is out of their control. They didn't build the car, but they're there to service, first of all, the customer, and then also take care of the vehicle, make sure it's safe and reliable. They should be compensated 100% for that work. Last thing I'll wrap up with, again, this is a complicated issue, very complicated issue, and it's not something I can probably do in 3 or 4, or shine light on in 3 or 4 minutes of testimony. We'd be happy to have conversations with anybody who would like more information. There are 27 million current recalls in the United States right now, and that was at the end of December of 24. But there's 27 million vehicles out there. If you just extrapolate the numbers, it's about 600,000 recall vehicles that are in the state of Missouri. We'd like to see our technicians and our dealers be compensated for fixing these, and that pretty much wraps up what I have to say.
Thank you for that testimony. Real quickly, why do you believe the third-party timesheets are more accurate than the manufacturer timesheets?
Basically because these have been industry standards for about 85 years. Independent shops have used these before. These were pre-franchise laws. These have been kind of the standard from the Automotive Service Excellence Foundation, which compute these based on a number of historical data and current data, and these are all agreed upon by, like I said, there's probably 10 of these out there, but there's 3 or 4 that are real big. All data is another big one that is used. But we feel that is the best source of information because it's prepared by industry professionals.
But I assume these are updated. They're not 85 years old.
No, no. They're updated.
Car repair has changed significantly.
Updated on an annual basis and supplied to the industry. It's used mostly by independent shops for customer pay. They want to, if a GM comes in and they want to know how much time it should take for an estimate for the customer, they provide that.
And how much more are these third-party technicians paid than franchise technicians?
Not knowing the full spectrum of that data, franchise technicians are paid well. They're required to take training. They're required to meet certifications as part of that Franchise Act. I would say it's very close in annual pay.
Well, in your testimony, maybe I misunderstood. I thought you said that we were losing franchise technicians to third-party dealers or third-party repair shops because of the pay discrepancy.
That's for the kids that are coming out of school. Like I said, I work very closely with tech school in St. Louis, Rankin Tech, and the president of that tech school has actually pulled me aside and said, that your independent competition is using this argument as a way to recruit new technicians.
And so they're being paid more at these independent shops. How much more do you think on average they're being paid?
My guess would be maybe 10-20%, which to a 23-year-old, 24-year-old coming out of tech school who wants to work on cars is, they don't want to play the game. They don't want to know that if they're working for a franchise dealer, that a fix that they have, they're only getting paid for 2 hours when it actually takes them 5 hours to do the repair. And these are kids that are trained. These are kids that have done everything they've been asked to do to be, up to date and, in tune with what the franchise agreement asks, what their employer asks them to do, and they're simply just kind of being pushed aside.
And does the existing law tie technician pay to the compensation that comes? Like, is the franchise basically limited in how much they can pay the technician?
No, that's based on what the employer wants to pay.
So they could pay more, they just are not unable to.
They pay what is best for their business model and the market that they're in.
Okay. All right. Further questions for this witness from the committee? Yes, Senator, please proceed.
Good morning. So I feel like some of this conversation we're going to have this morning on this bill is kind of like insider kind of, talk between pros and cons. I think what ultimately matters to our constituents, though, is like the impact that a bill like this would have on the price that the consumer actually pays. So, the price that they're paying for service along the way. And I acknowledge that if something's been recalled, there's no cost to that. But I'm just, considering we've got, tariffs in place on cars and that kind of thing, I'm just wondering how we would explain this kind of legislation to people that are really watching their pocketbooks.
Well, at the end of the day, majority of this compensation, or a very good portion of it, goes back to the technician, to the actual person that's working and living and taking care of the vehicles. Vehicle affordability is an issue. It's a big issue. It costs a lot of money to own a car. It costs a lot of money to buy a new car. That is out of my control because I represent the dealers. The MSRP comes out from the manufacturer, so I'm sure some of my counterparts that are here today to testify in opposition could clarify why vehicles are so expensive. They're more technologically advanced than they've ever been. There's a lot of stuff on there. I think we all realized back in around COVID when computer chips were not available that cars weren't being manufactured. The car is basically a smart home on wheels now. Even basic transportation has hundreds and hundreds of computer chips in it to make it run. A vehicle affordability is a huge issue. Missouri is a state that has a decent median household income, but not something that can keep up with the price of automobiles. It is a huge issue. At the end of the day, what this bill would do is make sure that our technicians are fairly compensated and that our dealers have enough money to keep their operations going, recruit new technicians, grow their business, and stay in their communities.
Further questions for the witness? Seeing none. Thank you again for that testimony.
Thank you.
Like I said, I think we will alternate just for expediency here. So we'll have first witness in opposition, and we'll go back and forth until they're exhausted. Make sure you fill out a witness card, and please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Nick Steingart. I'm here with the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, or Auto Innovators for short. We're the trade association that represents the OEMs that make nearly every new vehicle in the U.S., along with battery companies, semiconductor makers, tier 1 suppliers, and technology companies. We're here today in opposition to Senate Bill 502, which, as you've heard, would allow dealers to use independent or third-party time guides when billing manufacturers for warranty or recall work. As the senator said, I think the manufacturer-dealer relationship and sort of how this process works can be a little confusing and further convoluted by the fact that we have franchise laws in all 50 states that vary from state to state that make this a very complex subject. So if I could, I want to take a step back and sort of talk about the formula and sort of lay the groundwork for how this works. So you have two main components when it comes to reimbursing a dealer for warranty or recall work. You have obviously the cost of the part, which they're compensated for at a markup rate, the same markup rate that they charge the retail public, and then you have the costs of labor, which you could sort of subdivide into two components from there. You have the labor rate, which again is the labor rate that they charge the retail public, and the amount of time. And what we're talking about here today is the amount of time that it takes for that warranty repair. Obviously, manufacturers, we don't have an employee at the dealership who is there to oversee or witness every single warranty repair, so we rely on these time guides to bill or pay the dealer for the amount of time that's done on the vehicle. So you're going to hear more about these time guides a little bit later from some of our other witnesses, but they are an objective and scientific process when it comes to developing these time guides. OEMs use technicians with the same level of training as technicians that would be found in your average dealership. We account for time to pull the vehicle in and out of the service bay. It accounts for smoke breaks, bathroom breaks, and from what most manufacturers have told me is when they start the stopwatch and end the stopwatch, they'll add on another 20% or so to give a buffer for some unforeseen circumstances. So importantly as well, they don't use power tools when doing these time repairs like you would see in the average technician's toolbox. We are extremely confident in the accuracy of these times, and we are not just blindly confident. We have that confidence because every OEM, as you heard from the previous speaker, has a process in place that allows dealers to request more time if they need it, and that is rarely ever requested. So as far as the sort of the difference between the OEM's time guides and the aftermarket or third-party time guides, those time guides are really meant for independent shops that don't work on the same line make, same vehicles day in and day out like your average dealership would. I'll give you an example. I hate to drag my dad into this, but he worked for a dealership for multiple decades, left the dealership, went and opened his own shop, and he would use third-party time guides at his repair shop because he's like, okay, I've worked on Lexus vehicles for the last 20 years. I don't know how to work on this BMW engine replacement. So it probably did take him 12 hours or whatever the time may have been when the dealership could do it in 6. So that's sort of an example to give you the type of shops that those independent time guides are meant for. Unfortunately, as we've seen in some other states, when these bills have been passed, they result in about 50% higher warranty payments, which in Missouri would translate to about $120 million per year. Now, if there is problems, and we've said, we know that occasionally there will be instances where the dealer doesn't finish or can't finish the repair in the amount of time in the manufacturer's time guide, we unequivocally want to make sure that they're paid in those circumstances. So we've put forward a couple of offers to the dealer association to make sure that would be the case. First, we said if the dealer can't finish a specific repair in the amount of time, all they have to do is go into their dealer portal, submit a request for more time, and the manufacturer would review that. The second part of that offer said if the dealer is working on a vehicle and they've said, listen, I've got 3 of these vehicles that have come in. You guys say it takes 2 hours. Every time we do it, it takes 2.5 hours. Can you go back and review your time guide? We've also put that in our offer where we would have to go back and do the time guide. And importantly, under both of those offers, we've said, once the dealer makes the request, once they say, hey, I need more time, or hey, can you go back and review the amount of time in the time guide, the burden immediately shifts to the manufacturer. In other words, we can't unreasonably deny the dealer's request for more time or to review the time guides. We've also said we would just do away with the time guides. Let's throw away the manufacturer's time guide, throw away the independent time guide, just pay it. We'll pay you for actual time. So we'll set up a process where you can submit your timesheets for warranty and recall work, and that's exactly what we'll pay you. And that was rejected as well. So unfortunately, I do think we're at a bit of an impasse here. I do want to thank the sponsor for keeping us together and encouraging us to continue the dialogue. But, I think, frankly, we don't want to be having these fights and legislators sort of adjudicating this. Any manufacturer and dealer will tell you that our successes are closely tied together. When we do better, dealers do better. When dealers do better, that's a sign the manufacturer is usually doing better. We are extremely reliant on the dealer network for consumer education, for sales, and obviously, as we're discussing here today, for service as well. So, frankly, at this moment in time when is one of the most challenging in the auto industry, maybe in the last decade plus, we just do not want to be having this debate and coming in the state houses and fighting with one another. So, again, that was the spirit of that our compromises were offered under, and we'd hope to come to an agreement, but as the bill sits today, we're just not there yet. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, and I appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you for that testimony. I think you really kind of answered this question in your discussion, but since I asked the previous witness, I'll ask you the same question in reverse. Why do you feel that your timesheets are more accurate than the independent timesheets, or what do you think are the big differences between those two?
The biggest difference is the independent timesheets never time out the repair. They basically take what the manufacturer has said and then they'll tack on 20, 30, 40%. And as you may hear from some of the other speakers, there's not a lot of consistency between the independent time guides. Some of the repairs will say they take 6 hours. Some of them will say they take 10 hours, 12 hours. So they're not doing the actual repairs. The manufacturer's time guide is the only time guide where every single repair in the book has been timed and performed.
Questions for this witness from the committee? Yes, proceed, Senator.
Good morning. Several questions. So when you say that they don't use power tools, what do you mean by that?
They just use hand tools.
Wouldn't there be a situation where using power tools makes more sense, or?
We don't use that because, it adds in the extra layer of protection, you could say, for the dealer. When we're timing out, it's meant to be a slow, deliberative,
So you're sharing that because it's the most conservative estimate about
Yes.
the amount of time. They could speed it up by using a tool that was assistive.
That's exactly
Okay,
right.
cool. And then when you say it's going to cost an additional $120 million a year,
Mm-hmm.
is that cost passed on to our constituents, or does it cost the dealerships, the owners of the dealership?
No, that's purely the manufacturer's cost, and that's based on what we've seen in the half dozen other states that have passed these laws. It's
Okay.
about a 50% increase in warranty payments to the dealers and warranty costs from the manufacturer.
And that gets rolled into the MSRP eventually?
It's hard for manufacturers to not pass on these costs to the consumers, right? And the reason that you have so much opposition from our side on this is if, by our estimates, if this were to pass in every single state around the country, you're looking at a $5 billion annual cost to OEMs. So we want to make sure, I know there's a lot of discussion about Illinois. We want to make sure Illinois remains an outlier and that these laws don't spread to other states.
Well, it seems like what's going on nationally will really make used cars more valuable, so I'm kind of excited about unloading
Yeah.
some of the cars sitting in my driveway. The other question I have is why do consumers think it's more affordable to have a repair done at an independent repair shop? We seem to go to the independent shops because it seems like the prices are better than going back to the dealership where you bought the car.
Yeah.
But the way you're describing it sounds like, I don't know, I'm just interested in your perception.
No, you're right. And the data backs that up. I mean, 70% of non-warranty work is done at independent repair shops. So I think a lot of that comes down to cost.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what, when the car is under the warranty, we go to the dealership, but then the second the warranty ends, we start shopping around. So very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Why do you believe the independent shops are cheaper for non-warranty repair work than the dealerships if it's a 70% rate? That seems unusual if the independent shops are using more generous timesheets than the dealers are able to use.
Yeah, I frankly, I don't have a good answer for you. I would have to ask. I don't know as much about their business practices and why they're able to be more competitive in their cost.
I mean, it sounded as if in earlier testimony they were paying their workers more. Do you have any comparative information there? Maybe that was just like entry-level workers.
Yeah, I don't know about the technician pay at non-dealerships, but what I can tell you is, and I should have mentioned this when I was speaking, is manufacturers have absolutely no say in how much the dealers pay their technicians. And again, we're going to hear a lot about Illinois today. When the bill passed in Illinois, worker wages, I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, technician wages went up by somewhere between 3 and 5%, I think it was, even though dealers were getting 50% more from the manufacturer. I mean, the wages went up by inflation level rates, even though the compensation to the dealership went up by 50%. So we have absolutely no say in how technicians are paid.
Even when it's warranty work.
Right. We pay them whatever rate they charge the retail public. So if they charge the retail public $175 an hour, there's a process in your statute that they'll submit to us 100 repair orders, and we'll say, okay, the average rate that you charge the retail public is $175. That's what we'll pay you for warranty and recall work.
And your understanding is that 175 for this example is typically higher than what independents charge.
That would be my guess, but
But you don't know.
yeah, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Any further questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for that
Thank you.
testimony. Next witness in support. Everyone would make sure they fill out their witness cards as they go through. And please proceed when ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee, for your time. My name is Don Brown. I own Don Brown Chevrolet in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm also the chairman of the Missouri Auto Dealers this year, so not only am I speaking on behalf of myself, I'm speaking on behalf of the dealers across the state. Doug went through the numbers. Obviously, I'm in favor of this. I am on the border, very, very close to Illinois, and I have lost technicians. More than losing technicians, I get it thrown in my face a lot, that, they can go over there and pay less, or we're paying less and they're gonna make more over there. It's much like you said earlier, well, I think the independents are cheaper. I don't know whether they are or not, but they're scaring our people enough to take them away, right? So we don't really, anybody has hard numbers here. The gentleman prior to me said, if they went with, all data or Mitchell Pro Demand, their warranty would go up 50%. Their pay would go up 50%. That's a problem. If you all became a paint company and you went into a subdivision and you were going to paint houses, and we decided on a number of $100 an hour, and you went to 10 houses and they all said, okay, $100 an hour, I'm going to pay you 40 hours to do that at $100 an hour. But you came to me and I said, no, I'm only going to pay you 20. Would you paint my house? Probably not, because your people are going to get half the price. The difference is, in this scenario, you'd have to paint my house because you're under contract with me, and I'm giving you the number to do it at. That's my biggest issue with this, is arbitrarily, it was a little different back in the day when you had a paper time guide, because when they changed the times, they had to send it to you. Now it's all done with the stroke of a key. So all of a sudden, we're in the middle of a job and we go to turn it in, and the time's less because they've done a time study. So I think the easiest issue right now is if they're paying what all the other companies are paying, they're paying twice as much. So now we got this resolution process. If you've ever spent 10 minutes in a service department, it's going 100 miles an hour. And the things that we have to do under the policies and procedures manual, the service manager, the I's he's got to dot, the T's he's got to cross, it's a tough road. And now he's got to take every labor, every warranty ticket, and he's got to run it through this program, and he's got to go on. There's no time for this. The easiest way is to say, why don't we do this? Why don't we level the playing field? I'm looking at times, and I don't even want to get into that at this point in time, but if you had a company and the company you were doing business with said, this is the hours I'm going to pay you, or this is the amount I'm going to pay you, but everybody else is going to give you 10 hours, I'm going to pay you on 5 hours. It doesn't matter what that dollar amount is, because we're getting half the price of it. Plain and simple. Does it cost the consumer? No. It's an internal between the manufacturer and the dealer. I am a little different. I'm heavily union. The day that somebody clocks in, the first day of the month, I pay $2,600 a month in health and welfare and benefits before they turn one labor hour. So I am on a tight rope. Just try to make, and I have 21 technicians. I've had more than that, but I'm losing them, and I'm trying to get these young kids in. And yeah, you go to Rankin Tech, and the thought, reality is what people think it is. And if these young kids coming out of Rankin Tech and some of the other tech schools are like, well, I can make more money at the independents, we don't get them. I have 107 families that rely on me. And I'd like to pay them right, and like to pay them well, and make sure they stay with me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that testimony. Questions for this witness from the committee?
Just a comment.
Yes, please proceed.
I appreciate Lincoln bringing this bill forward. This is something my husband, when he was working his way through college, he worked at a dealership, and he was always confronted with whether or not to do the job well or to try to get it done in the time that they gave him. And so this is something he talked about with his boss often. Do you want it done right, or do you want me to do it in the amount of time that the book time tells me to do it in? So I appreciate your bringing this forward.
Further questions? Seeing none. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Next witness in opposition. Time to be somewhere, apparently. Please proceed when ready.
Did you want these witness forms somewhere?
Yes, just lay the witness forms on the table, and yeah, we'll collect them afterwards. They're just easy to forget.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Perry. I'm with General Motors. Here today in opposition of Senate Bill 502. Just a couple of quick comments up front, and then I wanted to address some statements that have been made along the way. So to begin with, the proponents of Senate Bill 502 have argued that the manufacturers are inadequately compensating the dealer technicians for the work that they're performing on warranty and recall repairs, resulting in the dealers losing technicians to their competitors, particularly independent competitors. However, one I think very important point here, and it may have been said, is that manufacturers actually don't employ the technicians. We don't pay the technicians. We don't set their pay. Their pay scale is entirely determined by the dealer. Our pay scale that we pay is to the dealer, and so we're paying the door rate, which is the higher number. Typically in the state of Missouri, that's going to be somewhere between $150 and $170 an hour. And on average, our research indicates that a technician is getting paid by a dealer somewhere in the neighborhood of $35 to $40 an hour. Overall, the dealer data financial information that's been provided to us from the dealers themselves, as an aggregate in the state of Missouri, shows that dealers are getting a 77% gross profit on their warranty labor, in comparison to a 74% gross profit on their customer pay labor. So they're already actually making more gross profit off of their warranty labor than they make off of their customer pay work. Now the dealers will come up at some point and they'll say, well, but I've got to take other expenses out of that, so you can't just look at the gross profits. And that's entirely true. Number one, in the business world, one of the most important calculations in determining the profitability of a store, you first look at the gross profits. You do then take away to look at your net profit, you take away your operating expenses, and when you do that, you're going to reduce your operating expenses from each of those profits by the percentage associated with the work done in that category. In the warranty to customer pay space, you're going to do about somewhere between 25 and 30% warranty work in your service department, and you're going to do the rest customer pay. So that means that you're going to take your operating expenses and you'll associate between 25 and 30% of those operating expenses to your gross profit in your warranty space, and you're going to take the rest of it and you're going to associate it to your customer pay space. If you do that math, what will happen is the gap will actually get larger. Your warranty profit will still be higher than your customer pay profit. So in total, and I'm not saying every dealer is doing exactly those numbers. Obviously, some dealers, and it's true for all businesses, some businesses do better than others. But on average, these are the aggregate actual numbers the dealers are submitting to us in their financial reports. Dealers have also argued that we should pay whatever the retail customer pays. I think it's important to understand, though, that manufacturers and dealers do not fundamentally have a retail relationship. They have a wholesale relationship that is governed by a legal contract. That contract spells out the benefits and obligations of each party. Manufacturers provide dealers cars and parts at a discount so that they can build a very profitable business, which they all very well do. And the dealer commits to representing and being authorized to sell our vehicles and representing our brand faithfully and loyally, and in the process making a profit on that. As part of that, they've agreed to doing some of that warranty work at a discounted rate. We are their largest customer, after all. It's interesting to me that in state code, we will govern this contract down to the last, every comma in the sentence, but the insurance workers, the companies that work with all of these dealerships as well, are not governed to that level of detail. They're allowed to come in and do a negotiated contract with the dealer to say, I will only pay you this rate, this amount of money, this much for the parts, in order for you to be my preferred repair shop. And if you don't do that, I won't put you on my preferred repair shop list. So State Farm does that all over the country. Nobody says, and I don't mean to throw State Farm under a bus, but as an example, nobody puts that into law and says, well, we have to really govern exactly what State Farm can pay the dealers here. So we think this is just an overstep where it's going too far, where the state's now getting into dictating exactly what we must pay at every level to the dealers. It's also important, I think, to understand that dealers are guaranteed, they bring up the recall and the warranty work as though it's a thorn in their side. The dealers are actually guaranteed warranty work with no advertising, no extra effort on their part. It comes to them as part of the deal. Independent repair shops don't get that backstop to keep their businesses open. Dealers are making millions of dollars a year on warranty and recall payments in that work that they're doing, and the independent repair shops get none of that business. In addition to that, the dealers receive substantial state protections that the independent repair shops don't receive. And Missouri dealers have benefited from millions of dollars in bonus support programs that are often never talked about in these conversations, to the tune, in our case, of over $32 million a year. Again, that's money the independents don't receive. It was discussed, how do we calculate our times? We have, and if we could have brought him today, we would have, but he was actually working in the repair shop. But we did bring a technician with us in a prior hearing to help explain this from his perspective. So General Motors has what we refer to as our warranty service repair garage in Clawson, Michigan. It looks exactly like a dealer service garage. It's a little larger, as you would imagine, because we have to work on more cars all at once. But it's exactly like a dealer's service garage. So you've got the microwave and the bad coffee in the corner. You've got rows of lifts and toolboxes at each of the stations. And the technician goes in. They get a job in the morning. They've never seen this job. Nobody's laid out their tools. And they have to go get the car, pull it into the bay, get the car up on the lift, and they basically go to the computer screen just like a technician would do and say, step 1. They read the steps, start the stopwatch, get the tool, do the work, turn back, stop the stopwatch, write the time down. They do that for every step of the operation. When they're done with all of that, it gets totaled up. We add 21% and round up to the nearest tenth. And a tenth of an hour is 6 minutes. So with all of that and the manual tools that we're using, there should be plenty of time in there to represent the normal technician's ability to do that repair in a reasonable amount of time. Now, we do understand that's not always going to be the case. We are working on newer cars. They tend to be cleaner. Most of them may have, worst case scenario, there have been a company car in operation for a couple months. We get that. So we do have a process that says if the technician needs some additional time, they can submit that through our computer system. It's the exact same system they put the warranty claim through. They just click an extra button, they answer a few questions, put down a description of why they needed the extra time. And in our case, I can say that, so we went back and looked at this over the last year, so 2024. In 2024, about 2% of all of our warranty repair claims requested extra time. With with our GM process, we approved over 98% of those requests. And so with that 98%, I think I calculated that out at one point in the state of Missouri. That's somewhere in the neighborhood of we had over 100,000 claims. So about 2% of those, about 2,000, only 2,000 of them being asked for extra time, and 98% of those got paid their extra time on the first request. So we're not making this extra hard for them. We simply are saying if you needed extra time, you just have to tell us why you needed it and give us some detail behind what's wrong with that. And we've been paying those claims. The dealers will probably mention that, well, then I get audited for that, and I don't want to be audited because then I get penalized. An audit is just a check. If it's like any other operation, if you make the number of claims that we make in a year, if you see a red flag go up and say, this one seems like it's out of step, what's going on, we just go check on it. If all of your documentation is in place, you keep the money. We don't take it back. And the vast majority of our audit chargebacks are not related to these types of requests. In addition to that, it was mentioned that the technicians are not coming to especially the newer technicians, because they can get about 10% more pay. So if you estimate that a new technician out of school is going to make, let's say, $60,000 a year, maybe $70,000 a year, 10% of that's going to be somewhere between $6,000 and $7,000. So let's call it $6,500. It turns out that in 2021, GM launched a Technician Excellence Program specifically to help dealers attract and retain new technicians. Under that program, a technician can qualify for bonuses, quarterly bonuses of up to $6,000. And that, $6,000 total per year. If the dealers match that at 100%, that can go up to $12,000 additional per year. In addition to that, we give discounted rates on vehicle leases, and we'll give new technicians $500 credit card towards buying their tools. All of these are to try to attract the technicians to the dealership, and then of course the bonuses are ongoing, so that's to help keep them there longer term. As far as some of the comments that I wanted to just quickly address here, it was mentioned that if it takes longer, it takes longer to do the job than the manufacturer has allowed the time, the technician won't get paid by the OEM. Part of that's true. We don't pay the technician, we pay the dealer. But the overall comment is actually false. We will pay them for the extra time. If our job said we think it'll take you 2 hours to do this job, and it took you 2 hours and 30 minutes to do the job, and you documented why you needed the extra time, we'll pay you the extra time. If it took you 3 hours to do it, we'll pay you the extra time if you've documented the extra time. There was an example given about painting the house. So if everybody's saying it's going to take 40 hours to paint the house, and I quoted 20, if it took you 30 hours to paint the house, what I'm telling you is I'm going to pay you the 30 hours it took you to paint the house. My estimate was 20, it took you 30, I'm still going to pay you 30. So we're not trying to underpay anybody, we're trying to pay for the time that was actually done repairing the vehicle. There is no blanket no on submitting these extra time requests. The process is there for a reason. We understand that there's going to be variations in both worker speed and conditions that the vehicle comes into the shop. The current process, and as it was mentioned, there's a current process in your Missouri code that puts the onus on the dealer. I guess I would ask, well, who should the onus be on? The dealer's the one asking for the extra money. At some level, the dealer has some responsibility to say, this is why I need extra money over and above what you are willing to pay me. There was a mention that the third-party time guides are the best arbiter of this issue. And there was also mentioned that these, quote, other companies, which I assume was referring to the third-party time guide companies, pay more. Couple things there. Number one, third-party time guides, and we have sworn testimony from the president of AllData, president of Motor Publishing, who is a publisher of AllData's information. who has sworn that they, first of all, don't do time studies for their repairs. They publish based on a best estimated guess, and they use technicians that have worked in the field who are giving their best estimate for that, but they don't study it. In addition to that, he's sworn that their time should not be used for warranty, and they actually should not be used for billing at all. They're intended to be an estimate. So even in the independent repair world, they shouldn't be used for billing the customer. Third-party time guides are there as an estimate to provide upfront information so customers can compare shops. At the end of the day, the expectation is supposed to be consumers are paying for what they're getting in terms of the time spent repairing the vehicle. The third-party time guides are not regulated in any way. They are not updated every year, and they don't measure their times. If we're going to start looking at third-party time guides and put it into law, then I think we first have to start by asking the question, number one, why are consumers being charged for time that's not spent working on their vehicle? Number two, maybe we should be regulating the third-party time guides and start there so we have some sort of a basis. And number three, ask the question of why is the manufacturer's time guide, which is actually studied with a stopwatch, not good enough? So with those points in mind, I think, one last comment. It said the majority of the change in this the money would go to the technician. I think first of all, there's nothing in this bill that even mentions the technician's pay. Everything in this is about what the manufacturer pays to the dealer. So when it comes to the technician, it's interesting to me that the bill was completely written from the perspective of mandating what a manufacturer must pay to a dealer, but there's zero mention of what the dealer must pay to the technician. And as was mentioned earlier, the case study that we can take out of Illinois and all of this when they passed their bill, it was a study conducted by the state union that looked at what was the outcome of the bill when it passed Illinois and what benefit did the technicians get. And their own reported data said that the technician pay went up 3.9%. And again, that's compared to the dealers getting an additional 50% increase in their pay because the state of Illinois uses a 1.5 multiplier, so straight 50%. I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that testimony. Questions for this witness? Please proceed.
Now, we'll probably have some on both sides. Why would there be a difference between the independent automotive guides like Chilton's versus, say, I know you're GM, but I'm going to pick on Ford a little bit because I've got a 6-liter, and I think we'll probably see some laughs in here. I know there's a couple dealers that know my problems that I've had with that fine truck that I'm driving today. How come the independent repair guides differ time-wise than what your factory technicians have?
So first of all, the third-party time guides will tell you, and again, this is in the testimony. We have copies of the testimony, by the way, I can provide you. So
that'd be great.
Yep.
I'd just like to get informed. I've got a few random questions.
Sure
so
thing,
just bear with
absolutely.
me.
So the third-party time guides will tell you straight out that the reason for the differences in their time, first of all, number one, it's an estimate. It's not intended for billing. It's intended to be an upfront estimate. Most states have what are called truth and repair laws. Truth and repair laws require that the customer gets an upfront estimate before the repair begins, and after the repairs are done, they get a final invoice of what was actually done. And if the upfront estimate is too short, you have to go back and give another estimate. So what the time guides are trying to do is they're trying to overshoot the mark so you don't have to go back and do more estimates. So the numbers are going to be a little bit high on the front end. In addition to that, the publishers will tell you that they're trying to account for the fact that the books are intended more for independent repair shops who don't see the same cars over and over and over and over again. The technicians don't have the same level of training. They don't necessarily have all of the same special tools that are intended to fix those specific cars. And so when you add up all of that extra time, the estimates tend to be higher.
Okay. You said your dealer mechanics, when they're coming up with their time guides, are using all manual tools. Is that correct?
Ours do, yes.
Okay. Do they just have one 3/8-inch ratchet set, or do they then have multiple 3/8-inch ratchet sets with an 8mm socket on one, an extension and a 10mm socket on another, and another might have a 15mm socket on it laying there, and they know, okay, these 8 bolts are the 8mm, I need this one. I do that, I set it down. And then they go grab Whereas you might have a mechanic in a shop that he's just got one 3/8" ratchet set. And so he gets done with one, he's got to take that extension and socket off, grab another and go. Can you
So-
speak to that any?
Absolutely, yes. So our technicians in the shop are all set up with the exact same toolbox. It is a standard toolbox for a dealer shop. So there's no special setup. They don't have, separate wrenches all just laid out, ready to go. They have to put the socket set on for each change. So, and it's part of their time measurement. So when they start the stopwatch, the first step is they get the tool. If they have to get a specific socket head for that, they'll put that on as part of the timed process, and they'll go do the repair. When they come back, they put the tool away, they stop the stopwatch.
I feel like this is something we could have betting on. How fast can a mechanic replace head gaskets on a 6-liter? I'm just going to make the last comment, because I'm sure there's many different jobs, but my local dealer in Concordia, how I got hooked up with this gentleman is because his nickname is literally 6.0 Joe. Like, that's how smart he is with the 6-liter Power Strokes. So he is very efficient with head gaskets, but yet he cannot come anywhere close to what the manufacturer says it takes to replace the head gaskets. Now, granted, I know on the flip side, say injectors for the purpose, maybe he beats that time by 2 hours. I wish we could find some consistency or middle ground. That's probably all I'll speak to. I got some more questions later, probably.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, Senator, proceed.
Okay, first of all, the toolbox, what tools do you use? Are they Mac or Snap-on, or do you know that?
I actually think the ones that we purchase are Snap-ons.
Okay. Well, my dad sold Mac tools after he retired from a Chevy dealership.
Then
so
they're Mac.
Anyway, I won't hold that against
Then
you.
they're
though,
Mac
so.
tools.
Well, I wasn't going to share this, but my first paying job was when I was in elementary school. I cleaned a break room at a Chevy dealership for tips, and it was the worst job I've ever had. Grease everywhere. Like, out, damn spot out. The grease never went away. So one of the questions I had, though, I'm just trying to think through how, and it's the same question that I'm going to ask everybody, the impact of something like this, how it's going to impact our constituents. They don't care about this back and forth that we're having. They just want to know if it's going to increase their costs to buy a car, keep a car in good shape, both when it's under warranty, but then when it becomes, off warranty, where they have the freedom to choose a shop.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little hard to hypothetically speculate into the future. Like, what exactly will happen to the charges here? The likelihood is it will increase the cost of the vehicles. If you extrapolate just the numbers that Nick provided, it comes out to somewhere in the neighborhood of $400 to $600 additional per car. And historically, when states pass legislation like this, we do know that does increase the cost of the vehicle. A 2017 study by the American Consumer Institute shows that about $4,000 of the cost of every car today is due to these types of laws.
So Illinois has this already, say this bill would go into effect, which it quite possibly could. Does that mean like we would go to another state to buy a car because there could be a difference in price because of the fluctuations in state law?
Right now, we are just equalizing it because there's fewer than a handful of states that have even adopted anything like this.
Okay.
So we're just equalizing it, but it's entirely possible. Like Starbucks charges different fees in different states.
Mm-hmm.
You could see different prices in different states depending on who's done what.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for that testimony.
Thank you.
Next, witness in support. Please proceed when ready.
Good morning. My name's Katie Huseman. I'm a fourth-generation privately owned small dealer in Kirksville, Missouri. I'm the parts and service director at Love Green Ford Chrysler, and we celebrated 90 years last year. I've spent the last 5 years in the parts and service department and 10 years in the industry. And before I move on, I'd like to make a comment that I would invite the manufacturer to come to my shop and work on our manure-covered trucks. And we have to power wash our vehicles 9 times out of 10 to work on them, to do recalls, because the farmer doesn't have time to do that for us. But we'll move on. It wasn't until 5 years ago that I really understood how vital technicians are to our dealership. We can't sell a car without a technician. A new vehicle that comes to our lot, we can't sell it until a certified technician road readies that vehicle. They check the windows, they check the tires, they check everything on that vehicle to make sure that it's ready for the customer. If that vehicle sits on our lot and that safety recall comes on that vehicle, we can't sell that vehicle until a certified technician fixes that recall before the customer gets it. When that vehicle comes back as a used vehicle, we can't sell that vehicle until Missouri State Highway Safety Inspection is done. If I don't have technicians, I'm not a dealership, plain and simple. I did a labor study in my own shop. I took 20 Ford repairs and 20 Chrysler repairs. I have 2 stores. And I took recalls. Let's see, I have some examples. I did manifolds. I looked at recalls for the tailgate latch. I looked at high pressure fuel pump recall. I looked at the wiper motor recall. And I ran those recall times against the third party. And I was astonished. I live this every day and I didn't know how bad it was. Ford came out 30% less. Chrysler came out 43% less. Now, what does that mean? For the technician that works 40 hours, if that 40 hours was warranty work, you would be paid $938.20. And that's based on the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics in Missouri, the average hourly wage of an auto technician, which is $24.58. Over a year, that's $24,000 that we're shorting technicians. Over 5 years, $120,000. Now, would you sign up to be a Ford technician if you knew that? And the secret's out. I serve on the board of the Kirksville Area Technical Center Automotive Technology Department in Kirksville. And every year I sit with students and we do mock interviews. We talk about opportunities in the automotive field, and we do question and answers. These are 16 and 17-year-olds looking into their future of a career in automotive. And every year I get a question. Does warranty work really pay less? What am I supposed to tell them? Yes, please come work for my shop. We got great benefits, a great work environment, but the manufacturer's only going to pay you 30% less than anybody else. How am I supposed to hire a technician? Because the guy down the street, Joe's Garage, he's paying them. It's a problem. It needs fixed. I can't operate without technicians. I don't have a dealership. You asked about how this affects your constituents. If there's no dealership in Kirksville, Missouri, they have to drive 60 miles for that recall, 60 miles for that warranty work. Once that dealership's gone, how far do they have to drive? An hour? 2 hours? Thank you.
So, do you have the specifics there for your area? How much more are the independents paying their technicians than you're able to pay?
As far as
Well, you said like the wage is 30% less.
30% less.
So
yes.
so how much? So at the dealership, how much an hourly rate are you paying the technicians versus the independent down the street?
So I'm right at that average of 25.
Okay, you're paying 25. And how much are the independents there in Kirksville? You said
Yeah,
how much
in-
are they paying?
Between that 20 and 25, depending on if it's an entry level or higher.
So they're paying the same.
They're paying about the same.
Well, then where's the 30% less coming from?
The 30% less coming from is, so if brakes are quoted an hour to do the job, The factory's paying 0.7. The independent shops are paying an hour.
Okay. So they're paying the same wage, but they're so they're both working 40 hours a week. They're both paying
Yep.
the same wage to the technician, but the independent is getting an hour and the dealer is getting 70% of an hour.
Yep.
Math is hard. Whatever 70% of an hour is. But the technicians are ultimately making the same wage. So if this bill passes, then do you anticipate that technician wages for your dealership would go up, or would you have the same experience other states have had where we've had testimony that they don't go up?
Yeah, so my shop pays on a flat rate, so as many hours as you turn is how much money you make. So if you're turning 40 hours at that $25 an hour, you're going to make that $1,000.
So then you wouldn't anticipate this impacting your technician's wage?
Well, yeah, it would impact it because they're not making that 40 hours. There's no possible way for them to clock that much because it's taking them more time to complete a job than they're being paid. My average technician averages about 32 hours a flat rate. They're about 8 hours short.
So they work a 40-hour week, but they only get paid for 32 hours. That's what
Yes.
you're saying. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Very good. Other questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you for that testimony. Next, witness in opposition.
Do you have any more bills after this, Mr. Chairman? You do? Great.
I'll try to be quick.
Sorry, Tony.
That's all right. Tony Reinhardt, registered lobbyist, Ford Motor Company, here today in opposition to Senate Bill 502. Let me admit up front, our time guides do not cover manure removal, so I apologize for that, but we can talk about that because in all sincerity. I'm not going to give lengthy testimony. I'm just going to answer some of the questions, I think, from our perspective. I think it's important to note that, one, we don't pay the technicians, and so we do pay the labor rate, and so the debate is about the time guides. Like others have testified, we have certified technicians, and I think that's a key to this discussion about how we get the technicians certified at the front end and get them trained. I was in all the meetings in Illinois, which you've talked about quite a bit this morning, and was in the meeting when I made the offer to the technicians union representatives in the room to go to actual rates, and they immediately said no, and I asked why, and they said because they will receive less compensation. And I said, explain. And they said, well, because basically what this ends up being is kind of piecework, right? And they will get it done as certified technicians, quicker, generally speaking, than the time guides, and they don't want to take that. But we do pay what the time guide says, even if it goes the other way. So there may be times when it goes over the time because of a strip bolt or something like that. But if it goes over, well, if they document, just like my friend from GM testified, 90-some-odd% of the time we will pay that, as long as it's documented. But it's also important to know, too, that very seldom, if ever, do we get the time guides appealed, right, the actual time guide. And so I think that's important as well, because I think we would see there's more opportunity for conversations with our dealer friends in that area as well to make sure that we get the time guides where we can all agree that is right. But we think that based upon what we do in terms of our certification with our technicians that do it, and they do it with the hand tools, et cetera, just like previously testified, that it's a fair process. And again, the time guides that were designed, the third-party time guides were designed for those outside shops who don't certify their technicians, they don't have the same training, they don't have the same tools, and they don't do the work on a regular basis on Ford versus the other OEMs where they spread themselves out. At the end of the day, I think the answer here is we'd like to continue the conversations, but unfortunately, for all the reasons that have been stated in terms of the costs associated, we would like to continue to have this conversation and would oppose the bill. And I will gladly work on the senator's truck problem as we proceed if he needs help. I'll close with that and answer any questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing one, proceed.
I mean, I do the best job to wash my vehicle off before I take it in because I feel bad for the mechanic having to work on it. I love the 6-liter. Once we got it all ironed out, she runs like a top now. We're about 38,000 miles. Going back to your time guides and the tools, I mean, I heard the other gentleman mention that they have a setup for their mechanics, but yet other mechanics I talk to, like, they're buying their own tools and everything. Is it kind of up to the mechanic to decide what they want in their toolbox, or is there like a standard that you all say this is what you have to have?
Well, when we go through the certification process, we will share with them what tools they should have, and with the dealership as well, what tools you should have to work on whatever vehicle, whether it's a 250 and up or a electric vehicle or whatever it might be. Those are all provided to the dealers.
Because I know oftentimes there's a handy dandy wrench for taking a starter or something like Deere's, like starters on a certain tractor. There's a nice wrench that they actually make that makes it 10 times easier, as opposed to me cutting one in half. And
Well, I'm not going to say we're
but
perfect in conveying those communications of every tool that's on the market, but we try to share with them what tools they need to work on those vehicles.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you.
Further questions for this witness? Since I don't have any, that will be all. I appreciate your willingness to testify today. The bill sponsor would seem to be anxious for this to end. So I will remind everyone that please, limit your testimony, no collateral testimony. If statements have already been made, please refrain from repeating them. I'm jesting just a little bit here, but we do have other bills that we want to get to today. And so with that, next witness in support.
Thank you, Senator. My name's Kyle Wymuth. I'm from Sedalia, Missouri. My family and I own and operate a General Motors dealership as well as a Stellantis dealership. We've got 105 employees and 25 mechanics, and I had a whole prepared statement. We'll just skip all that. To talk a little about the time guides and some of the questions you asked earlier, I wanted to give a couple just specific examples. For example, a 2024 Chevy Silverado to replace a camshaft. We use the third-party site All Data, which has been discussed quite a bit. All Data suggests that should pay 32.1 hours. The General Motors time guide says 18.5. So we'll just leave it at that one example for now. When you talked about, or we've talked about the trade schools and coming in and recruiting over our folks and the pay scale and how that works, whether we're paying them $25 or $55, it's going to be paid based on the amount of hours that they're flagging. And those other independent shops, the gentleman from General Motors talked about how we have the opportunity, the free work coming to us, and that the independents don't have that opportunity at those millions of dollars. Quite frankly, they don't want that opportunity because they could charge 32.1 hours for that, whereas if they were doing what we do for the manufacturers, we're only going to be able to get 18.5. So again, whether it's 25 an hour, 40 an hour, whatever you're paying the mechanic, they and the store are losing out on thousands of dollars right there. To answer the Senator's question earlier on the effect on the constituents, I know one thing our industry has been guilty of. We specifically do not do this, but you talk about if you do have a warranty issue on your car's broke down. If you go to a dealership that you did not buy it from, or quite frankly, you go back to a dealership you did buy it from, since it is going to be warranty work or recall work, a lot of people that I have heard of, fortunately none of them are in this room, they put that to the back of the list because they have other jobs that are willing to pay their mechanic or their technician a better rate. I have both level 3 at Stellantis, which is the highest level of training, and GM world-class technicians. They continually come to me complaining that they cannot get to the hours that GM and Stellantis say that they need to get to. And technicians talk. They talk on forums. They talk to each other at training. They want to know why technicians in Illinois, New York, and Minnesota all have these opportunities that they don't have. So that's all I have.
Thank you for that testimony. Questions for this witness? Yes, proceed, Senator.
Not to be fair. You talk about that camshaft replacement is actually funny. I feel like I recently saw a video on Facebook showing that of how they're going, this is how long this job takes. Has there ever been a job where, like for that example, the time guide that the GM gives you is 18 and a half hours, where your tech has come remotely close?
On one like that, no.
I'm assuming this one is going to probably involve taking the cab off and removing a whole lot of stuff. We had to replace some stuff on our Lincoln at one point in time, and I was shocked to go in and see that all was left was the frame and the motor.
It's fairly scary if you want to walk in and see what your car looks like. It's like walking into a surgery.
And I understand that. what would you say the percentage is, just to be fair to both sides, what would you say the percentage of jobs is to where then you have a time guide where it says that, hey, this job is going to take 8 hours and you knock it out in 5?
Are you talking about on the third party or on the ones from-
The dealer, the OEM job, let's say you're replacing front axle bearings
Sure.
on a 08 Silverado.
If the setting is absolutely perfect and they've done it 5 times in the last week, a lot of times they can beat it by, tenths of an hour. But again, it has to be a perfect setting. The vehicle couldn't have been set outside freezing overnight. We have to thaw it. We have to jump start it. We have to do all these other things. If it's a lab-like setting, then they can sometimes do it.
And forgive the other side, and they can answer this if someone comes back up and they do have an answer for it. When these time guides are made by OEM, is it done on a, granted it's probably not, to your knowledge, is it done on a new vehicle that's just rolled off the assembly line?
I understood, again, that it was more of a lab setting where it's clean, sterile, low-mile vehicle, doesn't have rust, doesn't have a lot of the weather conditions that we deal with here, but I've not watched how they do it personally.
All right, thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none. Thank you for
Thanks,
being
Senators.
here. Next witness in opposition. Please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, member of the committee. My name is Jackie Barget. I'm a registered lobbyist here on behalf of Toyota Motors of North America. And we'd also like to go on record in opposition. We are one of the manufacturers that have a plant here in Missouri. I will keep my comments brief, but just want to say we have a very good relationship with our dealers here in Missouri and have not over the past year had any complaints or appeals in regards to our time guides. So we do think that there's ways to work through these issues and disagreements outside of legislation.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Next witness in support. Please proceed.
My name is Steve Brown. I'm with the Frank Leda Automotive family. I'm a third-generation dealer in St. Louis, representing Honda, Acura, Mitsubishi, Buick, and GMC franchises. So I'll just address some of the comments that have been made. Number one, if the time goes over what the paid time is from warranty, there was a comment made that the manufacturer will make up the difference. I've been doing this for 27 years. That's never once happened. So maybe some manufacturers are different, but the point of this legislation is to create an even playing field. The next thing, somebody mentioned that there was very few appeals that happen. And I would submit that few appeals happening is more of a factor of the cumbersome process for appeals than it is the absence of insufficient labor times. There was a comment made that why don't we just use the straight time, the time that the technician actually takes on the job? You can't do that, and that's unfair for both sides, because if I have a phenomenal technician, top 1%, he can do the time in less. He's getting cheated because he's got 30, 40 years experience. He should be able to make additional time based on his experience and expertise. Conversely, if I have a technician who's brand new or maybe slow or maybe just unqualified, if he takes twice as long to do it, I wouldn't expect the manufacturer to pay me twice as much. So having a one set labor time would be a more fair alternative for both sides. There was a comment made that these time guides are meant for independent shops. That's not true. If you look at their websites, Chilton specifically indicates that they are for both dealer and franchise dealer and independents. And I quote, developed by industry experts to reflect real-world conditions encountered in repair settings. These conditions factor in technician experience, which I just mentioned, vehicle age, wear and tear, preparation time, and unforeseen complications that arise during actual repairs. There was a question about what is the biggest difference between third parties and the manufacturer times, and the biggest difference is impartiality. The company footing the bill, on the one hand, is setting these times. Of course, if you're footing the bill, you're going to have a vested interest in making sure that time is pressed down as much as possible. If you're impartial, these third parties don't make more money because they inflate times. That's not in their best interest. They are completely impartial. You could look at 10 different third-party times. You have Identifix, you have Chilton, you have Motors, you have ALLDATA. Doesn't matter which one. They're all within a few tenths of each other. The manufacturer, on the other hand, is 50% less. So I would also submit that the outlier is because of that fact that they're partial and they have a vested interest in making sure that time guide is insufficient. They mentioned that there's a $5 billion cost if this were to go through. What that represents is a good chunk of that money is underpaying technicians in Missouri for doing the same jobs as somebody across the river. I'm on the South County, St. Louis side. I have a competing Honda dealer on the other side. I lost my best technician last year to go to the Honda store on the other side of the river, primarily for this reason. I've lost 3 technicians in total in the last year. There was a comment about 77% gross profit percentage. What that doesn't factor into account is all of the expenses that dealers have as a result of the franchise relationship. I paid $40,000 for tools and equipment last year that I was forced to pay. I just bought a $17,000 sign out front because my other one, while it operated perfectly fine, was just out of brand standards. I spent $2 million on my showroom 5 years ago. We have exorbitant costs. I just bought a $60,000 alignment machine. My other machine was perfectly fine with alignments, but this one calibrates with some of the sensors going on in the vehicles now for autonomous driving. And I had to pay $60,000 just for those few extra features, and that was mandated by the factory. So yes, we do make additional money from the manufacturer, but it doesn't nearly compensate us for the costs that are forced upon us in some of those ways. Thank you.
Thank you for that testimony. How are the independent entities that make the independent time guides, how are they compensated?
In independent repair facilities?
No, the entities that set the time guides.
We subscribe, so independent repair facilities, and every dealership I know of, they mentioned it wasn't for dealers. I don't know a single dealer that doesn't use a third party. Nobody uses the factory time guides. When I have a used car that I'm paying for as a dealership, and I'm going to pay my technician to do a strut on that used car, I'm using a third party. The customer, when he comes in, or she comes in to do a repair on that strut, they are paying that third party. So we subscribe to that third party and we pay a fee every month.
So the repair shops that subscribe to the third party timesheets, is it advantageous for them for those timesheets to be longer or shorter?
It would make no difference. They're all, you could pick 7 of them that I'm aware of. They're all within a few tenths of each other. So, and on their websites, they claim that they are real world conditions.
Would a repair shop prefer to have a more generous timesheet or a less generous timesheet in terms of time allotted?
I would say it would be fair would be probably the goal. You want something that's accurate, because if I use, let's say, a third party that is out of line on the high side, then I'm going to be charging more to customers. Therefore, I'm not going to be competitive. And so I'm not going to get the business. So what you want is accuracy. You just want fairness. You don't want to be exorbitantly high because you're going to lose business being priced too high. You don't want to be exorbitantly low because you're not going to be able to recruit and hire technicians. So you just want it to be fair and right.
But the timesheets are just used to provide an estimate. Then the actual billing will be the actual time. So like
no, that's incorrect.
That's incorrect.
Yeah,
so
nobody uses actual time, because if I have an unqualified technician and he takes 3 times as long to do the job, you would not pay that. A customer would never pay that, because then you're paying for my learning curve. Conversely, if I have a technician who's top 1% in the country, he does it in less time. Good for him or her, because they've earned that because of their experience and expertise. These technicians invested $30,000 to $40,000 to become technicians.
Well, I haven't been to a repair shop recently, but you're essentially telling me they don't bill labor.
They don't bill straight time. So you don't set a stopwatch and say, oh, it took them 2 hours to do this brake job, I'll charge 2 hours to the customer. You charge a flat time. If you're unqualified, you're going to lose time. If you're overqualified, you're going to make a little time and you deserve it. Good on you. But what you want is a fair labor standard, because the best technicians are going to end up a little bit better, and unqualified technicians are going to work themselves out of the industry because they just couldn't cut it.
But we're dealing with warranty work with technicians that are all trained and certified and should not be on a learning curve.
There's always going to be a learning curve. So to be a trained certified technician, I just had one become master certified. He is far below the standard of my technician who's been doing it for 20 years. This gentleman has been in the business for 4 years.
Sure.
He's had all of his tests. He's master certified by the OEM, not a single test undone. But he would do the repair time in about 20% less time than my best technician. So I have 60 technicians total between my 5 rooftops. I probably have 2 technicians out of those 60 that can hit the warranty times on a consistent basis. Every one else of them can't. So there is a learning curve no matter what.
Okay, fair enough. Further questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Next witness in opposition.
Mr. Chairman, member of the committee, Ray McCarty, President of Associated Industry. Oh, members. Sorry, we had another one join us. Of the committee, Ray McCarty, President of Associated Industries Missouri. Want to go on record in opposition. There's nothing that prevents dealers right now from paying their technicians more. And I think that's how we started the conversation. I think that's what you need to remember. When they passed a similar bill in Illinois, the technician pay did not go up by the amount that they received. There is a tremendous amount of overhead that's built into these prices already. The dealers or the manufacturers have done a good job of doing scientific studies to try to figure out how much time it takes for an experienced technician to do this repetitive work. Remember, the difference is the Chilton manual is looking at someone like me who doesn't know cars, and I'm trying to figure out how to repair my car to give me an estimate of how long it's going to take. You would not want me working on your car. However, if I were working at a dealership and I were a trained technician, I would be working on the same brand of vehicle typically, and I'd be looking at the same types of repairs over and over again. I'm going to get better at it. And that's the reason for the difference, I think, in the time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Next witness in support. Seeing none. Next witness in opposition. Seeing none. Evenly balanced.
Okay.
Amazing. Anyone here for informational purposes only? Seeing none, that will. That looks like there's no closing remarks by the bill sponsor. Appreciate his presence as well. That will conclude the public hearing on Senate Bill 502. Next, proceed to public hearing on Senate Bill 559. Senator Berger, please proceed when ready.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Senator Jamie Berger, representing the very wet 27th District. Thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 559 dealing with sovereign immunity for private contractors. This means that such contractors would be protected from certain legal liabilities similar to those protections afforded to government entities. This current language is very broad, and I'm open to narrowing the scope, but believe this was a good place to start. When the private contractor is awarded money, they are given a notice to proceed. However, due to no fault of their own, for some reason the work is not done, they are not ever able to even start their work, and that they get added to the lawsuit because they were the awardee of a contract. Senate Bill 559 would limit the time frame that a suit can be brought since they were not the reason for the work not getting done. This is important because these lawsuits can drive up insurance costs for the private contractors. There's several experts here to give you testimony on actual things that have happened along some of these job sites, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none. Thank you for that presentation. First witness in support. And let me ask real quick how many folks are here to testify on this bill. Fewer than the last bill. I think we'll go with classic structure witness testimony here with this bill. Please proceed.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Dale Williams. I work for the Missouri Asphalt Pavement Association, where I serve as the executive director. We represent asphalt contractors that do the heavy highway work on Missouri's roads and represent probably over several thousand employees who work for these companies. And we're here today to testify in support of Senate Bill 559. And really what the crux of this is, our contractors, they work on these jobs. They bid them. It's a low bid environment. They operate under the direction of MoDOT, who follows nationally recognized standards that have been vetted through, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, federal highway guidelines. These are all very standard practices used around the country. But many times, these contractors are targeted in a lawsuit because they have the deep pockets. They have the insurance. And many times they're caught up in lawsuits that have nothing to do with the work they did. They followed every standard as it was on the plans. They don't have the opportunity to change the plans. If they do change them, there's a process they work through with the DOT to make sure that they follow all the processes, all the safety standards, and yet they're still targeted because they've got the insurance, right? MoDOT's currently capped with sovereign immunity, and we're asking that this be extended to them. I'd share just a couple of examples. We have one contractor that was hired to fix a shoulder differential. The shoulder there was like a drop off. Before they had started any work on the project, there was an accident. Somebody ran off the road, they overcorrected, came back on. There was, I believe there may have been a fatality or disability, an injury. It doesn't matter. They ended up turning around and suing the contractor, which I think the litigation drew on for like 7 or 8 years. There was no payout, but they spent 8 years litigating the case. Another example, one just happened recently. An individual was pulling a boat, and they came into a work zone. There was whenever we were doing asphalt overlay, they sometimes put a butt joint or a temporary joint, between the day's construction. Everything was built to the standards. The trailer separated from the vehicle, went to the other lane, hit the oncoming car, several injuries in it. They found that everything in the work zone followed every standard. The taper on the butt joint followed what the MUTCD required. The sign package, everything was exactly as it was supposed to be. The individual driving the car had the wrong size ball on their vehicle. The safety chains that were on the trailer were not adequate for the load, and also there was an issue with the brakes on the trailer. The contractor ended up paying out $3 million because of this issue. They followed everything to the T, and yet ended up having to pay out $3 million. These go on and on. We've got contractors, that work in Missouri, that work in other states that have maybe not sovereign immunity, but another bill we're going to hear in a little bit. But the insurance in Missouri, by our estimates, costs the taxpayers $3 million annually in extra insurance premiums here in the state. Currently, Missouri ranks 44th out of 50 states for being the legal, the most litigious states in the country. I mean, that's something we're proud of. 44th out of, there are only 6 states worse than us to be sued in. I think that's horrible as a taxpayer, and it costs the taxpayers. And we're not asking for no accountability. If somebody does something grossly negligent, then I think that's fine to be brought into it. But when we're doing everything according to how the plans show, we feel like we ought to have some protection. And with that, I'd encourage you all to support this bill and be glad to take any questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you for being here. Further witnesses in support? Seeing one? No.
Good morning. My name's Casey Kastrup, and I'm with a private contractor here in Missouri that paves and roads and builds bridges, and thank you for allowing the time to be here to speak to you all. I do want to speak on a couple incidences that occurred on projects or roads where we had done work. We had a project on Interstate 70 that was built in the year 2017. It was accepted by the MoDOT in early 2018. An incident occurred in June of 2020, some 2 years later, where a third-party tractor trailer had pulled off to the outside shoulder so the driver could use the restroom that she had in her sleeper cabin, and then another third party had come along and hit the back corner of the tractor trailer and suffered life-threatening and life-altering injuries. They had went after the truck, sued the trucking company, and then pursued MoDOT, which MoDOT has a sovereign immunity cap, and then they also named our company in the lawsuit, stating various things that the rumble strips were not put in according to plans, which they were. They were put in per design of the plan, and ultimately the suit was, I think we were able to litigate against it for a period of time, but being drawn into it for 2 years later was just something that again happens a lot, just because we were the contractor of the route that was had the last work done to it. The other incident I want to speak on is a situation where it happened currently or recently in 2024 in Springfield on Route 60 and James River Expressway bypass through south of Springfield. The work was adding, as it's been going on for the last several years, a continual third lane each direction. We had the contract to do another section of that. One of our employees at the time was in his own personal vehicle. He was returning back to the project from his lunch break. As he was slowing to pull into the construction area where they were parking their vehicles to obviously go back to work, he was struck in the rear by another motorist on a motorcycle. The speed limit had been reduced to 50 mile an hour through there. The traffic lanes were no different than throughout the whole day. He was obviously slowing and pulling into a blocked off third lane that was not open to the traveling public yet. His vehicle insurance was capped at a small cap of liability. So the third party on the motorcycle is now pursuing litigation against our company for obviously having the construction project and the fact that he was our employee at the time. Again, he was in his own personal vehicle on his lunch break, and yet we're still getting drug into a lawsuit. Traffic control was set up. There was nothing changing a direction for the motorcycle. The two lanes of open traffic were there. There was no merging. Believed to, was at a higher rate of speed than the posted reduced amount of 50 mile an hour through that area of the work zone. So, again, thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of our contractors for Senate Bill 559.
Thank you for that testimony. Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you again for
Thank you
being
very
here.
much.
Further witnesses in support? Please proceed when ready.
Thank you for having us here. My name is Dwayne Mueller. I'm the Corporate Safety and Compliance Manager with Magruder Paving. And I'm here in support of sovereign immunity, and I wanted to give the committee a real-world example of the need for this reform. The case in question is Sawyer versus Magruder Paving. As a result of a crash on 65 south of Sedalia on December 8th of 2016. In this case, Magruder, as the prime and general contractor, is accused of negligence for a sign installation completed to spec by our subcontractor. The incident occurred 5 months after the project was completed, and the plaintiff was speeding, engaged in reckless driving, along with another driver who was under the influence. I would like to make you aware of the facts that surrounding the case that are significantly relevant to SB559. The work on the contract was completed July 11th of 2016. On July 18th, 2016, a MoDOT inspection accepted the work of Magruder and the subs that included the installation of the alleged problematic sign. Magruder was paid in full by MoDOT on August 15th. The incident occurred on December 18th of 2016. It's important to understand that due to MoDOT's system and process of completing paperwork, the job's final acceptance was January 4th of 2017, long after we were gone from the job. This case is a perfect example of a prime contractor being forced to defend themselves and ultimately settling with the plaintiff. Even though Magruder Paving followed the MoDOT contract documents, Magruder Paving met the federal highway standards and specifications, everything was in line with the contract. Magruder and subs performed at the required level for acceptance of the work. A point I would like the committee to understand is that Magruder or any other contractor does not get to make decisions outside of our scope of expertise, especially engineering changes to the plans. In this case, MoDOT settled with the plaintiff. Okay? So the plaintiff continues the actions against the contractors, accusing us of failures in which we have no decisions, no decision-making power over engineering choices or any of that, right? We just have more insurance. These and many other liability factors directly drive project costs much higher. Taxpayer funds don't get as far because of the extreme risk on contractors for punitive lawsuits. It is also a barrier to the entry for new construction business. If you're not an established business contractor in this state, you're probably not going to come in here. The insurance costs are extreme. But we appreciate your consideration for this Senate bill. Thank you.
Questions for this witness from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you again for being here. Further witnesses in support?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Steve Bubanovich. I'm here representing my company, HR Quadri Contractors in Van Buren, and the Associated General Contractors of Missouri. I am in support of the bill. Like the gentleman before me, I've also suffered because of this. In about 2012, we had a contract in West Plains, Missouri. It was to expand US 63 to a 4-lane highway. Once the project got started, there was some concrete repairs identified that were not included in the original documents. So we tried to negotiate prices, and we never got to the right price. So MoDOT decided to do that work themselves. They were working within the project limits of our project, providing their own traffic control, doing their own labor, material supplies. On one day, a young man, star football player in the town, entered the work zone going the wrong way on a two-way, 1-lane road closure. Unfortunately, he struck one of the local preachers, and the pastor passed away in that accident. About 4 hours later, my crews that were on the far south end of the job learned about the accident. Long story short, my company, my insurance company, wound up paying out about $925,000 to the deceased and the other young man that caused the accident. MoDOT chose to take the case to trial. It went to a jury trial. In the end, the jury awarded the deceased's family $6.8 million. The $6.8 million plus or minus. That value was determined by the original contract value that I bid and was low bidder on that job. MoDOT, under their sovereign immunity at that time, paid about $425,000 of that $6.8 million settlement, where we were still liable, although we settled out of court, for $925,000. And again, that work was being done. The only reason we were punished at all was because the MoDOT forces were inside my work zone.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here today. Further witnesses in support?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Mark Rhodes. I'm here on behalf of the American Council of Engineering Companies of Missouri, just to go on record in support of this bill.
Thank you for that testimony. Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Further witnesses in support? Seeing one. Got to be quick on the draw around here. Oh, yes, please proceed.
Good morning. Eddie Welsh, Farmer Holding Companies. I don't know that I'm going to add a whole lot of value other than going on record as support of this. I think we all understand what the situation is here. We are not asking for sovereign immunity on a project where we have fault. We understand. We've all been a part of issues where our employees are either not trained right or just an accident occurred and we're responsible, we're willing to take responsibility. But in a situation that my peers have just talked about, they're driving up the cost of us building roads, and ultimately it's eating up more of the budget. So every single year, our company spends over $30 million in insurance. That's a big number. We had less than 9% loss ratio last year. So if you guys are familiar with insurance, whether it's your car or your house, if you're at 30% or under, you're probably not going to get a premium hike, right? If you're over 30%, your insurance premiums are going up because you've had losses. We had 9% loss ratio last year in our entire company across $30 million of insurance, and our insurance went up 14%. And when we asked the markets, I run the insurance for our company, when we asked the markets why our insurance is going up, and they said, because the litigation that's out there, the what are they called, atomic verdicts or nuclear verdicts, we're all protecting against that. This is the insurance companies talking. So when our insurance goes up 14%, we have no other option other than to pass that on to our customers. 90% of our business is with the state of Missouri.
If we could pause one moment here and take the rolls to establish a quorum. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senators Trent, Gregory, Bernsketter, Carter, Coleman, McCreary, Weber.
All right, we have a quorum. Excellent. Please continue with your testimony.
I'm good.
Any questions for this witness from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you for being here. Next witness in support. Seeing none. Witnesses in opposition. Please proceed when ready.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Randy Albrahaski. I'm a personal injury and workers' compensation attorney from Springfield, Missouri. I'm here to testify against this bill on sovereign immunity. I think the proper way to start in examining this bill is to realize that we are all immune from liability as long as we do no harm and we do nothing wrong. The people who have testified before me, on behalf of different contractors for the state, all have testified about situations where they have performed negligently, where they have done something wrong. They've not used reasonable care, and under those circumstances, they've been found liable for injuries suffered by individuals. What this bill is incredibly broad to begin with. It provides sovereign immunity to anyone who contracts with the state or a county. So it's not just contractors here today, but it deals with if we all get sick from eating soup at the kitchen downstairs today and we go to the hospital, the kitchen's not liable. They have sovereign immunity. They pay nothing. If we are injured by an accountant driving a car or a computer programmer hired by the state or a gardener who mows over our foot, they all get complete immunity under the circumstances under this bill. So it's incredibly broad and not well thought out, I think. What this bill does, in essence, is transfers the damage done by the wrongdoer, by the negligent person, from that person responsible for it to the injured. There's no other way around that. It's the injured that pays for the immunity, not the wrongdoer. And I think that's wrong, and I think it's bad policy. And it goes beyond the injured person itself, but all the people who support the injured person, such as the health insurer, such as if there's a work comp injury behind this, if someone working on the highway is injured, work comp insurer. Going to more pointedly to something that's of concern to all of you, I'm sure today, is Medicaid would be affected by this because they would not be able to recover from the injured party for the damages that they sustained in paying for medical bills and other services to the person who was wrongly injured. It's important to understand, I think, at the essence is what sovereign immunity is about. Sovereign immunity is to protect we as the government, and it's to protect us because, in part, we're not here to make money, we as the government. All these people behind me who have testified are here to make money. They do this for a profit, from 5 to 15%. So if they do a highway project that costs $100 million, they make $5 to $15 million off that. They're doing that for a profit. Well, what happens when we take away their incentive to be safe? Because that's what this bill does. They no longer put up the warning signs. They no longer, protect the highway people with markers, and they no longer, build the highways to specifications. We have one of the safest highway systems here in Missouri precisely because of the system we have, where people are held accountable for being negligent, for failing to use reasonable care. And if this bill is passed, you can no longer guarantee the safety of our citizens on the highways and in any interaction with a contractor of any kind. With that, I'm glad to answer any questions.
Questions for this witness from the committee? Yes, Senator, please proceed.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch. What do you do for a living?
I'm a personal injury workers' compensation lawyer down in Springfield, Missouri.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Further questions for the witness? Seeing none. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Testifying today. Further witnesses in opposition? Seeing none. Any closing remarks from the bill sponsor? Oh, wait a minute. We do have a further... Information only. Oh, I'm sorry. Information only. I totally skipped the category. My apologies. Please proceed.
Thank you, Senator Trent and committee members. My name is Pat Kelly. I'm with the Municipal League Metro St. Louis. We're neutral on the bill, but we do want to point out that there actually is an issue with sovereign immunity in the state of Missouri currently. Several years ago, there was a court case that said that if political subdivisions enter into a contract with a contractor, and if they're named as a second insured, they waive their sovereign immunity. And so currently, that is the way it is in the state of Missouri. So I would entertain or hope that maybe an amendment can be made to this bill. Senator Trent has filed the last couple of years a fix for this. Actually, it's on my notes. It's Senate Bill 54 this year. Thank you. Sorry about that. And that could be amended. It's a simple fix. The court that ruled on this said that this isn't the intent of our current statutes, but it's the way the statutes are written. And all this does, the bill that Senator Trent has filed, changes the definition of purchase. And so I would just ask that if the bill moves forward, they consider entertaining an amendment to add that to it. Be happy to answer any questions.
You certainly know how to make requests that are appealing to the committee. Any questions for this witness? Well, to the chair of the committee. Won't speak for the whole committee. Seeing no questions, thank you for that testimony. We will certainly take your request under advisement. Any further witnesses for informational purposes only? Seeing none, any closing remarks from the bill sponsor?
I said earlier in my presentation, this current language is very broad, and I'm open to narrowing the scope, but I believe this was a good place to start. Thank you for allowing me to present.
Thank you, Senator. And that will conclude the public hearing on Senate Bill 559. We will proceed to public hearing for Senate Bill 826. Senator Gregory, please proceed when ready.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Senator Curtis Gregory, 21st Senatorial District, presenting Senate Bill 826 before you today. Definitely learning some new terms being on general laws, and as the senator and I were speaking of about the previous bill, you generally, over here, you get a broader perspective when it comes to filing legislation, so I guess this is one of my first dabbles into a little bit of tort reform potentially. So some of the terms are new for me. I wish I would have stayed in my ag law class when I was in college because they might have been a little more familiar, but the book was really big and the professor required lots of reading, and I was trying to play a little sport called football. So we got out of that class. All right, so the way I've understood it so far, Missouri is a pure competitive fault state. So the current rule, plaintiffs can recover damages even if they bear the vast majority of the fault. The problem would lead to disproportionate liability and large settlements over minor unrelated technicalities. Results potentially unfair outcomes, higher insurance premiums. That seems to be a common terminology for the day, and uncertain liability exposure. So what Senate Bill 826 would shift to a modified comparative fault state. I think Kansas is one. Next to us would bar recovery if a plaintiff is 50% or more at fault. Below 50%, recovery is proportional to the plaintiff's share of the fault. So just trying to think of real world example, if someone is potentially, let's say, running a red light, so they are obviously at fault because they're running a red light. Let's say someone is turning left maybe but doesn't have their blinker on. You could potentially then say, well, they didn't have their blinker on also, so that's their fault too, not mine. Is just an example I kind of come with in my head. Key benefits: fairness provides primarily at-fault plaintiffs from receiving windfall awards. Accountability discourages reckless or negligent behavior. Lower cost reduces insurance premiums. Project costs, saving taxpayer dollars. So those are just some examples I was given. Be happy to take any questions, take testimony from experts behind me, and continue to work forward on this. This isn't new legislation. It looks like it's been around for quite a while.
Now, questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, thank you for that presentation. Witnesses in support.
Got to run to a hearing next door. Jacob Scott with the Missouri State Medical Association. No expert, but a registered lobbyist nonetheless, and wanted to go on record in support of this bill, which is about fairness in our judicial system. Thank you.
Thank you for that testimony. Questions for this witness? Looks like you almost had one. Further witnesses in support.
Good morning again, members of the committee. My name is Dale Williams, Executive Director of Missouri Asphalt Pavement Association, representing the heavy highway asphalt contractors in the state. We're here to support the bill. The senator, laid out quite a bit about it. I'd like to just share a couple of real-world experiences where contractors have had significant payouts. We had a work zone where a motorcyclist, there was a flagging operation set up. Motorcyclist ran by the flagger, drove through cones, drove through tack on the road, and the flagger radioed. There's a pilot car bringing traffic through the work zone. It's a one-way. They had a one-lane drop. The motorcyclist crashes into the pilot car. They think that the gentleman is going to succumb to his injuries. Fortunately, he lives. And then when he recovers, he turns around and sues the contractor, and they end up paying out $7 million. Guy runs a stop sign, drives through cones, hits somebody head on, and sues and gets $7 million. Do you want to know why he got it? Because they found that one of the flagger's radios was not working properly that day. This flagger wasn't in the vicinity of where the accident happened. He was not the flagger that the person drove by. But they found a technicality, and the company ended up paying out $7 million. Another example, we had a contractor that, again, following the plans that the DOT specified, added some extra striping, temporary striping in the work zone, but he didn't put it everywhere. The driver going through the work zone fell asleep, runs off the road. I think he was ends up paralyzed from it. Anyway, this here contractor pays out over $7 million because they said that the contractor recognized that striping put in the plans wasn't adequate, and had they put it everywhere, the driver wouldn't have fallen asleep. These are, I could give you examples like this all day. You'll hear more later. But, we're, this is costing taxpayers money. Just to give you an example, you take a contractor that does $50 million worth of work in Missouri and compare them to a contractor that does the same amount of work in Kansas. The insurance premium is $100,000 more for that contractor in Missouri. And when you look at MoDOT, they do about $1.5 billion worth of work. So that translates into about $3 million in insurance premiums that our contractors have to pay just to do work in Missouri. That all gets passed on. And if you want to think about what does that mean as far as safety improvements, that's about 12 miles of pavement that don't get paved every year, or maybe a bridge or two that don't get built, because we're paying those in excess insurance premiums. You heard the senator talk about this just shifts. If you're at fault, you should have to pay for it. The contractor shouldn't have to pay for you being at fault. We just ask for your support of this, and I'll be glad to take any questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Further witnesses in support?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Seth Ricketts. I have an ag retail business, Ricketts Farm Service, 7 locations across North Missouri. I have a similar story. We run large John Deere sprayers and farm equipment, trucks, semis, straight trucks. In 2 separate but similar incidents I had, one of my machines was making a left turn, legal left turn with the blinker on, turn signal on, got passed by a motorist. One case it was a pickup at a high rate of speed, and another one it was a motorcycle. Both hit the front left tire of our machine as we were making the turn. They go in the ditch. Fortunately, both lived. Turned around, sued us, multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in reserve with our insurance company. There aren't very many insurance companies that want to insure our industry. It's difficult for us. There's only, and we have a great claims history, but this basically was a nuclear event for our insurance, for our business. And really the only burden of fault that they had to prove was 1%, and they were able to collect. So this is a great step forward, this bill. The only thing I would change about it is to make it more like Texas, where if a party is less than 51% at fault, they don't collect, they don't have to pay anything. So thank you for your time.
Questions for this witness from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Further witnesses in support?
I'd have a work comp injury, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, member of the committee, Ray McCarty, President of Associated Industries. I think there are attorneys in the room who could help me with that. Ray McCarty, President of Associated Industries in Missouri. I want to go on record in support of this legislation as we have for many years. We believe that if a person is a percentage responsible for an accident, they should be held liable for that percentage of the judgment, no more. The way the law works today, if you're more than 50% liable, if you're 51% or more liable, you can be held liable for the entire judgment. We don't believe that that's the way it should work, and we thank the sponsor for bringing this bill forward that will correct that and make sure you pay your proportionate share of the damages you may have caused. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Further witnesses in support?
Chair Trent, members of the committee, my name is Luke Reed. I'm here on behalf of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry, here to voice our support for Senate Bill 826. This would bring us in line with over half the states with this getting rid of the pure and going to the modified standard. For the reasons as aforementioned, we support it and be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Further witnesses in support?
Again, my name is Dwayne Mueller, Corporate Safety and Compliance Manager with Magruder Companies. I'm testifying on behalf of Magruder Companies, including Magruder Paving and Magruder Limestone, as well as anyone else who has had to defend themselves against the negligence of plaintiffs. I would like to present a case in which Magruder is currently involved that supports the need for a 51% threshold to collect damages. A plaintiff has brought suit against Magruder after the plaintiff drove his motorcycle, which I hear a reoccurring theme in here, drove his motorcycle into a Magruder pickup driven by a Magruder supervisor. I'll get straight to the facts of this lawsuit that support the need for SB 826. According to experts, police reports, witnesses, as well as video evidence captured on several cameras, the plaintiff was operating his motorcycle at approximately 3 times the legal limit. I think it was nearly 80 in a 35. The plaintiff was more than 2 times the legal blood alcohol content. And the driver's license of this plaintiff was revoked. He should have never been on the highway. The driver of the Magruder pickup truck did nothing wrong. Additionally, the witnesses and experts have reported that there is no way the Magruder driver could have seen the motorcycle. Additionally, the video evidence shows the motorcycle being operated in an extremely reckless and high rate of speed. This lawsuit is being litigated primarily because Magruder has a large policy limit available. Given the current comparative fault situation, the attorneys know they can extract something from the insurance company. We believe if SB826 comparative fault threshold is in place, a lawsuit like this is not even filed because of the extreme burden of proof on the plaintiff. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Further witnesses in support?
Rich Aubuchon, a registered lobbyist for the Missouri Civil Justice Reform Coalition and the American Property Casualty Insurance Association. This bill does three things, one of which approaches the modified joint and several liability system that we have in place today that we've had since 2005. In that particular instance, the current law, 51%, you are liable for the remainder of the judgment, but you seek contribution from everyone else. So you somehow get whole that way, apparently. That said, there's another piece in this bill that would render that modified joint liability system a pure several liability system, so you'd be subject to whatever the court found as your judgment. That changes, however, in situations where defendants settle out, and the bill also addresses an issue dealing with what's called the empty chair defense. So you can allocate fault to those who are non-parties. Today, you can absolutely do that, but it is not reversible error if you do not get an empty chair defense instruction. So you can ask for it, you don't have to get it. It's not reversible error. So you can end up holding the whole bag without the empty chair defense and allocation. On the third thing is another significant change, all of which of these are significant, is the change to comparative fault. So that would be more of an absolute bar, the absolute comparative fault, so that those who are more than 51% liable for the injury that of the plaintiff was liable for their own injuries, they would be barred from recovery. All of these are very significant changes for Missouri law. I look forward to working on the issue.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Further witnesses in support?
Mr. Chair, member of the committee, Michael Gibbons, representing Associated General Contractors, to go on record in support. The one thing I want to add is on the pure comparative fault, just the history of that, and really spans my time as a lawyer. I mean, initially, contributory negligence was an absolute bar. So if the plaintiff was even marginally at fault, it would bar any kind of recovery. So then, what's the result? What's the change? Well, it goes to the other extreme, where they could be, not instead of like 1% at fault and barred, then they could be 99% at fault and still recover. What this bill presents is I think, an appropriate middle ground for establishing that. It doesn't knock out the plaintiff's claim because of any level of negligence, but at some point there's a level of negligence on the part of the plaintiff who is substantially responsible for their own injury that should act as a bar on the claim.
Thank you for that testimony. Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Further witnesses in support? Seeing none. Witnesses in opposition? Counsel, proceed when ready.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Randy Alberhasky here, back again. I'm here to testify, again, as a personal injury lawyer and workers' compensation lawyer against this bill for many of the same reasons that I testified against the sovereign immunity bill, because this bill shifts the cost of someone's negligent and unreasonably careless activity from the person who's responsible for it to the person who's injured and to other parties. So there are multiple ways in which this bill is flawed. First and foremost, I would say, is by limiting the recovery of the plaintiff if they are 51% or more at fault. Comparative fault was brought to the state for a good reason, because people should be responsible for the percentage of fault that they are involved in causing an injury. There shouldn't be a complete bar recovery just because someone's 51% at fault for an accident. For instance, if they are speeding and they are cut off by someone making a wrong turn or blowing through a stoplight, if they're assessed 51% fault, then they get nothing. That strikes me as unreasonable, unfair, and not only is that harmful to the injured person because they get nothing, but to the third parties who should recover under that circumstance, such as, again, health insurance companies who would normally get a part of what they paid out for health insurance coverage, workers' compensation if it was a work comp injury, Medicaid. The state would get repaid for part of those, for all of the medical bills it paid out for that accident, but would be barred because of the 51% rule. And keep in mind that judgments are already reduced by comparative fault. So if I'm 51% at fault for an accident, that judgment for my injuries is reduced by that 51%. So the parties are only paying the part of that judgment for which they are responsible. Now, the second part of the bill that I would take issue with is the doing away with joint liability. In Missouri, if someone is 51% or more at fault for an accident, then they can potentially be held liable for the entire amount of the judgment. And that makes sense because the person who's injured, and again, the third parties who recover, health insurance companies, workers' compensation companies, Medicaid, shouldn't pay the burden instead of the one party who's most at fault for the accident. And if you're 51% at fault for the accident, you're most at fault. You're the predominant factor in causing that injury. A third issue I would take with this bill is that it reduces the amount of the judgment, amount of the recovery, by a phantom third party that what we call an empty chair at a lawsuit. If a plaintiff brings up a lawsuit against one defendant, maybe they bring against two defendants and they settle with one of them. Well, under this bill, the remaining defendant can argue that the other party is at fault for the accident and get the judgment reduced by the amount of that percentage of fault. Well, the problem with that is twofold. One, that party that was taken out of it already probably settled, and they've probably already paid. So they're going to the defendant who is rendered a judgment against is going to get credit not only for what was already paid by the statute, because that's the way it's currently read, they'd be reduced by the settlement, but also by the comparative fault that is assigned by the jury. So they're getting double deduction from the judgment for the wrongful act of the third party that is not even part of the suit. And the other problem with that is, when you don't have a party there to defend themselves, then sure, yeah, we can all argue that they're at fault. I mean, there's no one there to defend the absent defendant. So it's much easier for a sitting defendant to argue someone else is at fault when there's no one to defend that someone else. So in whole, this proposed statute fails for many of the same reasons, policy reasons, that I pointed out with sovereign immunity. Do we really want to reward the wrongdoer by shifting responsibility for their negligent act to someone else, to the plaintiff, to Medicaid, to health insurance, to workers' compensation? And by doing so, aren't we really just reducing their incentive to be safe, to use reasonable care, to use ordinary care? I don't think we want that result. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Questions for this witness from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Always good to see somebody from Greene County.
Thank you.
Further witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, any witnesses here for informational purposes only? Seeing none. Senator, do you have any closing remarks?
Nope. Thanks for squeezing this in still.
Thank you, Senator. That will conclude the public hearing on Senate Bill number 826. With no further business coming before committee, I move that we adjourn. Do I have a second? It's been seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Committee is adjourned.